Well, I see our faces in OBS. That's always a huge win. I think it's working. And I can confidently say good afternoon because you are actually living in the future. You're an hour ahead of me. Good afternoon, Spencer. How are you on what is for me a very chilly Monday morning? A little warmer for you, but you got more snow to deal with than I do, so
Yeah,
trade-offs.
snow. Yep, that's exactly what's happening. It's nice and chilly here below zero, but yes, it's we've shoveled once. We'll have to shovel or snowblow again.
Oh yes, yes. That is pretty much a given if you live in the Midwest in the wintertime. You will be shoveling and snow blowing. I had a professor in college who had worked in the UP at one point and said every morning in the winter he just automatically went to the garage and got the snowblower. He didn't even think. It just, of course, it snowed because the UP. So,
Yeah, I in southeast Michigan is about as far away in Michigan as you can get from the UP. So I can't imagine living out there. But I grew up in the foothills of the mountains in Utah, and w- just being 1,000 feet above the valley floor, we got so much more snow
oh, I bet.
than the valley did. We would get 3 feet overnight. I never had school canceled for snow ever from third grade to graduation. Not a single
Really?
day for snow. The buses would stop coming to the normal bus stops. They'd come to the bottom of the hill.
Oh God.
All the parents were then required to get their kids down to the bottom of the hill, but school was never canceled.
No, no, no. Just roll the kid downhill. It'll be fine. Yeah.
Yep,
Fantastic.
yep,
Fantastic. What
yep.
could possibly go wrong?
We got close once, but that was a power outage. It's like if the power's out at school for 2 hours, and it was like a minute, hour and 45, 15 minutes short, but that was as close as we ever got.
So when I was in college, my college had essentially two campuses. We had two schools, but coordinated. So you had classes on both campuses, and so we had a bus system that ran back and forth nearly continuously. Right? I mean, the buses were never an issue. There was never an excuse to be late to a class, other than I just made a mistake. Right? So during January, the J term, which was like a 3 week sort of fun period, it was really cold, and some unidentified students, I genuinely don't know who, decided, we really want tomorrow off. And so they went and unplugged all the buses. So none of them would start the next day. So school was
Nice.
canceled. And after that, they put in some surveillance around the buses to make sure that we couldn't repeat that particular trick. But still to this day, I have no idea who did that. But tip of the hat for getting us
Props
a
to
day
them.
off in
Yeah.
January.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I see Java Grunt has popped into our chat here. Much as you're one of my
Woohoo.
loyal chat listeners here, which I always so it's good to finally get you on this side of the cameras.
Yeah, it was scheduled a while ago and it didn't work out. So I'm glad to be
Well,
back. This morning I was like, wait, I know there's something important today. It's like, wait, what time is this at? Okay, I've got time.
well, you slacked me, and I'm like, wait, did I forget about something? Did he have to go earlier today? Then I'm like, did I make a mistake? Did I miss an hour here somewhere? I'm reading the Expanse series right now, and there are moments in there where people just lose like 3 minutes of time or 20 minutes of time. I thought, did the Expanse happen to me? Did I lose a couple hours? Like, oh man, it's I know all about the block heaters. Yeah, I hear you there. So anyway, well, it's good having you here. I'm delighted always to get a chance to hang out with you. As we were talking in the pre-show, I'm pretty sure you were the last person I'm not related to that I ate with before the pandemic kind of shut
Yep.
everything down. What, 15, 20 years ago now, back in Atlanta at DevNexus. So it's always a pleasure when I get a chance to hang out with you. So thanks for coming
Yeah,
on the little show here.
we went to I want to say a little, is it a barbecue joint just down the street from the World Congress
Mm-hmm.
Center or something like
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah, yeah. I
There
mean,
were some
fingers
nice
crossed.
ladies sitting next to us, if I recall.
Yes, we did get into a
We
conversation with
chatted
a
with
woman
them.
not too far from us. And we didn't get any trouble. We didn't offend anybody, so I was happy with that. But fingers crossed, we'll get a chance to repeat that meal here in a few months when DevNexus, I think, comes back in person. Maybe,
Yep,
yeah,
yep,
maybe. So I'm looking forward to it.
yep, yeah. I have two talks that I'm supposed to be giving.
Awesome.
It was funny. I was like, I'll just put some talks in and see what, like, maybe they'll pick one. And it's like, this was not supposed to happen. Of multiple talks, so I'll be doing you know, what's new in spring, the spring 6 boot 3 talk, basically.
Do you play
and
like
that
rock, paper, scissors to see who either has to or gets the opportunity to do the what's news talk?
um I just was like, huh, I'll put it in. Who I don't have no idea if anyone else. Well, maybe
Sure.
I asked, but if anyone else was doing it, but yeah, it fell to me this year, which is kind of fun since I'm very narrowly speaking about some specific technology I'm involved with. So this will be fun to be a little more broad than in general. But
Now, do you
yep,
do the same thing I do, which is I'll come up with an abstract and then I'll pitch it, but I wait to build the talk until somebody actually says like bites on it, like yeah, I'll take that. And I'm like, oh, I guess I better build that material out now. What was I thinking there? What did that talk look like?
yes, I do that. I do that indeed. I've thought about it. It's not like I
Yeah,
haven't not thought about it, but I hopefully, I mean, Jurgen basically gave some version of this talk at Spring One last year, right?
right,
Um, but it was conceptual as no work had started. I mean, they've been doing work on Spring Native, but as a like in the experimental bucket, right? It hadn't nothing had moved into core or anything.
sure,
Um, so it was all this is what we're planning on doing, So uh, next in April, right? So at that point, it'll be this is what has been done. This is what's remaining to be done, right? These are the things that are not compatible. These things are, and my hope is to like take some slightly more than slightly more than trivial. So I guess you call that non-trivial, but I don't want to say like a big massive application and actually like change it. Like let's make
right.
it work with boot 3 and go, right? So I think that should be pretty interesting as opposed to just slides and talking about it and stuff. So,
Nice, nice.
yeah.
Well, I suppose we should, kind of jump again a little bit because I was so excited to talk about the weather. But how did you get into this weird space known as computers? What brought you
Oh
from,
wow.
how did you? I'm always interested to see the path that people take to go from, being normal human beings to deciding that playing around with computers is a good way to make a living.
Yeah. So I guess we'll start with my dad, um, who is a now retired physician, ear, nose, and throat (ENT) doctor. Um, but he his undergraduate medical school at the same school. So the summer between, he worked at the university hospital's computer, whole floor, punch cards, writing a single program to analyze something, right? So he has been in this. This was late 60s, right, when that happened. Um, so fast forward, he's uh, in the Navy. We live in Rhode Island. All the cool kids got an Atari, right?
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Cool. The cool kids got the Atari because, I mean, the games on there were fantastic.
Pong. Come
Um,
on now. How do you get any better than that?
yeah, yeah. And at my household, we got a TI 99A, a Texas Instruments computer. It
Hmm?
was an all-in-one, right? It was a keyboard with all the guts of the computer in the keyboard, place for cartridge. I
Yeah.
believe it had a place for cartridges, and everything. And so um, it had basic interpreter on it, and that was my first intro to programming at like six or seven. Um, so he retires from the Navy. We moved to Utah. You know, he has. We got a 8086 PC and had the 186 and a 286. Like we always had a
Hmm.
computer in the house. Um, so it was always my elementary school. I want to say in fourth or fifth grade had a Apple lab. with Apple computers. You'd put the
Did you
cassette
play Oregon
tapes.
Trail? Did you play Oregon Trail?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yes. Oregon Trail was awesome. But like you load programs from what looked like audio cassette tapes.
Yes, yes, I remember that.
Those were the tape drives.
Mm.
And so fast forward to high school, I took a computer aided drafting class, which was, I mean, they did traditional drafting and part of the course was CAD,
Sure.
right? Which was awesome. My junior year, I took AP computer science, which passed the AP test. Go figure. Like my teacher at the end of the year is like, there's things that are going to be on the test that we didn't get to. This thing called pointers. So the class was in Turbo Pascal.
Okay.
If you ever played with that. But after a few years later and later on in college, I found I had a 3.5-inch floppy drive that contained the editor, compiler, and every program I wrote in the class on the single.
Oh my God. That's
And
that's one of those things I've thought a lot about, right? In the length of time you and I've been in this industry, to go from stuff would actually fit. I mean, I installed like Word and Excel and operating systems from 3.5-inch diskettes, and you
yeah,
think about,
word
you
perfect,
know,
but yeah,
right, you think about streaming multi-gigabyte movies, you don't even bat an eyelash at it, and it's like, what artifact would even fit on a 3.5-inch floppy? I mean, I guess text
like
would, right? But
text, yes, yep. And so then I start university. My major is mechanical engineering. I really liked that drafting class and
yeah,
the drawing bits, and so I sign up for a math class and a physics class and a civil engineering class, all
you just wanted
required
a
before.
nice
Well,
light introduction to college.
those were all required to get. So I was in the pre-program, right? So to get
Okay,
into the program, I had to take these classes. So I took them, right? Because that's what
sure.
I wanted to do, and I hated them. Like they were all doing calculus, they're all doing the same calculus, and
Hmm.
I did not like it. I took a break for 2 years. I went to Brazil, uh, was a missionary for 2 years, and while I was there, I decided that part of the reason I liked the engineering was the CAD part, the computer part. So I went,
Yeah.
okay, I can do this. So I switched to CS when I got back. And of course, the first class, the professor says, well, the first class was actually the second class that was an issue. The first class was assembly, so nobody knew it, right? Like,
Right, right.
so it was all new to everyone, so it wasn't a big deal. But class, I tested out of my CS 101 class because of the
Sure,
AP
sure.
CS class that I took, right? So class two, my first sophomore level class was um, data structures, I believe.
Okay.
And the teacher goes, "Who here don't know what a point doesn't know what a pointer is or an object?" I'm like, "Me?" He's like, "You guys are gonna have some catching up to do." So the book, the examples were written in C. The labs, the TAs all knew Object Pascal.
Oh,
So you couldn't even use what was in the book.
perfect. Perfect.
But I knew Turbo Pascal, so I at least knew the language
Right,
if I
right, right.
didn't know what a pointer or object was. So I worked my way through that, and then got married and went to work full time and went to school part time. But I was working for an e-commerce company, which in 1998, that's relatively, in the door early. So they were paying for school, so I took a class one, a little at a time. So.
It's funny you bring that up because it's similar to how I made that transition in college. I was a chemistry major when I first got to college because, at least partially, we had these really cool workstations, these SGI workstations, and we could do some amazing stuff. I'm like, wow, we have this very powerful lab right here inside the chemistry building. And then I got to OChem, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, everything I'm working with is a known carcinogen, and everything I work with will eat through my hand if I'm not careful. So yeah, maybe there's a better way of doing things. And And when you make a mistake on, say, step 27 of a complex, reaction, there's no undo. There's no let me just go back to line 53 and fix it. And so that's basically when I made the transition into computer science and said, I'm good here. I'm good. Thanks.
You're like Seamus Finnegan from Harry Potter, the one that like everything, all the spells blow up in his face, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. No, and chemistry is a lot of fun. No getting around that. I did enjoy it, but it definitely gives you pause when you realize that there really is very little margin for error, and this organic acid will in fact eat through the slight oil covering your flesh and then burn through your flesh, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I'm not so interested in this. Yeah, and then of course the story of one of the professors who was doing some experiment and almost created like a noxious gas that would have likely killed them, had not one of
Oh,
the other
nice.
professors recognized the smell and come like sprinting into the lab and you know stopped it before it could harm the people in the lab. So I mean,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
fun like that. I never had that issue with any of my computer science courses where,
Nope.
and then that one program almost killed my professor. But so how did you go from getting into programming to getting into open source, getting into the Spring community? And you've obviously been there for quite a while, and I'm one of the
Almost
things I
8 years in June.
man, that's crazy. I'm one of the things I definitely want us to get into too is like how can other people get into open source? What can we learn from Spencer's journey, from open source user to open source committer to, Mr. Spring?
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I had e-commerce job, uh, government job, government contractor to nonprofit, right? Like that was my kind of my career prior to the Spring team. Um, Towards a heavy OSS open source user at the nonprofit, right? So um, we were Spring users, Hibernate, um, yeah, all sorts of stuff. We unfortunately at the beginning ran on WebSphere, but I eventually helped them transition to Tomcat,
Hey,
right? So more
we've
open
all been there,
source.
buddy. We've all been there. We were young. We needed the money.
Yeah, and so let's see. Fast forward towards the end of that time, I was actually. You remember REAC
Yeah.
database?
Mm-hmm.
It was built in Erlang, but it had an embedded JavaScript processor or interpreter in it. So I was doing kind of a proof of concept where the whole stack was JavaScript, including any like that's how you queried was you wrote a little JavaScript and it ran in the database. Like that's how React went. But it was kind of cool. You could write these little bits. You could write validation, for example, that ran on the client, the browser, that ran again on the middle tier, Node.js, and again in
In
the
the
database.
database.
It was actually really, really slick. Well, so JavaScript, and um, I can't remember what it was. My first pull request to any open source project was to it was probably React.js, right? Like the Node.js driver for React or something like that. That was the very first thing I ever did as a pull request. So I changed groups. I went to, it's called Family Search, right? You go to familysearch.org. It's genealogy and family history and pretty cool. So when I got there, they were running on Oracle in their own data centers, and Oracle was not performing for them. They had basically
Hmm.
this like uh, there's a movie called it's like stripped it down to its bare bones and put a jetpack on it. Like they're basically running Oracle as a key value store because anything else it would just fall over
Sure.
because of the amount of data that they had in it. And so let's find a database. Let's move to Amazon AWS, right? Let's so we can scale. So we were looking at Cassandra and MongoDB again to open source non-relational databases. but the app that we were using to drive the testing, we'd spin up 20 nodes. Well, we'd spin up 20 nodes of database, and then we'd spin up another how many other nodes to drive traffic to those databases to
Sure.
test our queries and stuff. The driver app, was written with Drop Wizard. I'm familiar with Drop Wizard from the fine folks at Yammer, now Microsoft. Um, and I was a Spring user, so I came into this app and was like, okay, I got to rework this. I can't. So I plugged Spring in, which was fine. There were some quirks, and the other thing we were doing is like, I'd spin up nodes and two would fail to spin up. And I was like, well, if I spin up two more, how do I know? Right?
Right.
Like you immediately have the cloud problem. And so I was like, how do I overcome this? And Netflix was just starting to open source things like Eureka and Ribbon and Hystrix and things like that. So I was like, okay, so something like this has to be part of our stack, right?
Right.
Um, so I thought at one point my colleagues had been to multiple Spring ones. Uh, so I was like, Drop Wizard's open source. I guess that means I can. I like Drop Wizard, but I like Spring. I want to mash them up,
Right.
right? Because Spring does lots of things. Drop Wizard used Jersey and JAX-RS for its web framework, right? Its API framework. So I was like, well, let's take everything out of Drop Wizard that it has to roll on its own that Spring already does, and mash them up. Things like embedded Jersey, or not Jersey, Jetty, the embedded HTTP, like I'll keep that because Spring doesn't have that. So I do this, and I was like, I wonder if any of the Spring guys would appreciate this. So I
Sure.
wrote up an abstract, submitted it, and I get uh, an email. It's like, hey, can we have a conversation with you? I got on a video call with, I think, some of the Spring team, and turns out the Spring Boot team. And they're like, we're basically doing this, and we're going to announce it at Spring 1. So sorry, we can't accept your talk.
Sure.
I was like,
Sure.
hey, at least I'm on the right idea, right? Like,
Right.
I got to see Spring Boot. They gave me early access to it before they announced it, so I got to see it, play with it before it went public in Santa Clara that year. And so that was cool. And after they released that, I was like, I actually moved to a startup, which is neither here nor there, but so I was in a different place of employment, and I was like, I still want, like, the Netflix bits were still good, right? Like, I want to keep doing that. So I replaced my custom stuff with Boot, but then I kept going with what I was planning. This was the next year, and so I was like, well, maybe they'll do it again. Okay. So I get an email this time. The track lead likes your talk and wants to talk to you about it. Yay! Track lead is Dave Sire.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I get on early in the morning, Mountain Time, so I can talk to him in England, and we have this just great talk about the future of apps, microservices, whatever, distributed computing, whatever you want to call it. And at the end of this talk, he says, I was just at Netflix headquarters last week, and we want to do this and announce it at Spring 1 this year. So unfortunately, you're not a pivotal employee. I couldn't put you on the stage. However, you've come up with the same thing we have 2 years running, and you're doing this outside of work. Would you happen to want to do this full time? Yes, I didn't even talk to my
Yes.
wife.
Yes.
Yes, I would. So I went to work that day and walked outside to have a phone call with Brian Dussault, and I started about 6 weeks later. So
Oh, that's so cool. So what? I mean, I see this comes up semi regularly. What advice would you give to someone who wants to contribute, doesn't necessarily know where to start? They feel overwhelmed with the process, with how to, I mean, as you look at something like Spring that's been around as long as it's been around, there's plenty of folks who have deep institutional knowledge. If I've only been using Spring for 6 months, boy, what can I possibly contribute? What advice would you have for somebody who, sits in that situation?
Well, it's interesting because I know the boot team really does a good job of it, and we try sometimes too, is to like find issues that are first timer,
Appropriate,
they're appropriate, right? Like it's a anything from a typo, right? Something super, super simple to a few lines of code or documentation or something. But the first one is to find something you're interested in,
right?
right? My pull request to React was like, this is a bug that keeps me from progressing at work. So this is why I want to do this, right?
Right.
Not everyone's going to have that opportunity. In fact, some people like, yeah, that have weird work arrangements. But uh, I was in an enterprise that I just literally had no time to do some of that sometimes. But find something you're interested in
Right.
is probably the first one, and then there's there's a hundred things to do in an open source project, and one of them is coding.
Right.
Right? Like I'm a I'm a horrible writer, yet I am in charge of documentation, right? So read my documentation, try and follow it. And if you like, this didn't make sense to me, can we clear this up and open an issue, right? Even just that, opening an issue against something you've read that doesn't make sense or something small, like it doesn't even have to be a pull request, right? Because that the mechanics of doing a pull request on GitHub is a thing that is a hurdle for
Right.
for
Right.
people. Um, uh, but I think Dave Steyer's looking at like code spaces, right, where you have to check out the project and make like compiles and everything. I mean, we're basically down to you must have Java, right? That's the only requirement we have pretty much now. But with code spaces, it would be like check out this project and it just have the editor and everything and all the requirements all up and running. But those are hurdles. But read through docs, even read through issues, right? Like um, comment where you it's appropriate. But yeah, small things are there are people in Spring Boot that's like pull requests that fix grammar in Java doc comments, not even like the documentation, right? Like the API
Right.
documentation in the code. So they're looking through the code and see things like, so anything small that you just want to get started with, especially on, I mean, let's face it, Spring isn't and its ecosystem is not simple and
No.
easy to understand on its
It's
own.
certainly not small, right? And there's a
No,
lot
it's
of moving
not.
parts.
Yep.
Well, I think that the documentation to me is one of the most unheralded aspects for people to contribute because it's anybody has that set of eyes that can look at it and say, I don't understand what you're doing here. When you're knee deep in it and you wrote the code and now you're trying to write the tutorial or the to do or whatever that goes along with it, you're skipping steps and don't even realize it because well everybody just knows this and it's like yeah no they don't and having that outside set of eyes without that baggage is so powerful. I mean, I like to argue that sometimes that's part of my job, right? It's like chaos engineer some of these things because I'll just like, oh, I'll just go straight down. It didn't work, and I Google them like, oh, you missed a step here. And it's I'm always a little nervous when I like throw that kind of back in there. I'm like, did I screw up? Like did I misread it? Did I skip a step? And it's like one word. Okay, no, good. No, this is just literally not here. It's so you'll need to add that. But I think there's a lot of ground there that people overlook. They think it's always about code, and it's not. I mean, I think the documentation is part of what I love about the Spring community, and anything you can do to make that better, please do.
Amen. Amen. We have guides and stuff that are all in GitHub, and even on my own team, like we're having someone this week that is doing our release process for our milestone, and that they've never done before. So it's like on our team, they're coming from the outside, and they've watched us do it and written notes and found things that we didn't have
Right.
documented anywhere,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it's definitely a thing where, like, I just, this is what I do, and it's just because I've done it, well, for almost 8 years, right? Like, this has been how we've done it for a long time. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you think about as a parent sometimes, that the things we may take for granted, if we haven't actually explained that, how can the kid know that? And I remember that being very vivid to me when my son played baseball for a couple summers, and I remember thinking the rules of baseball are pretty arcane. Why do you run to first base and not to third base? Why does it go, that way instead of that way? There's a lot of all sports arbitrary. They don't know that until you teach it to them. All these things we take for granted, like, well, it's 3 strikes and you're out. Like, they don't know that until you tell
It
them it's
didn't
three
used to be
strikes.
3 either.
Really? I didn't know that.
No, there's an episode of Little House on the Prairie where the traveling baseball team comes and they have to agree on the rules beforehand, because sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 4, not just 3 outs, how many innings, like the works. That it used to be pretty fluid in baseball, by the way.
And I well, and
Just
I think a similar thing happened, as I understand it, in football. And the reason why there are all these different variations on the same sport known as football, what we think of as football in the States is very much not what the rest of the world obviously thinks about football. But then you go to a place like Australia where there's 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds of football right there too, and they don't look anything like some of these other sports. I mean, I had the good fortune of being in Sydney for a couple weeks and tried to get my head wrapped around the differences between like Australian rules football and, again, there were like
rugby.
3 different. I know one took place on a cricket pitch, and there were like 45 people out there, including folks like walking around with water bottles. I'm like, what is going on here? But it's the same thing where this sport known as football, well, here, this is what we mean by football. And then it was only the 1800 something where they finally started writing down the rules, and then all the forks started spinning off from there. But
I love watching Canadian football.
oh yeah, yeah.
It's fun to watch because, for those that, anyway, for any Americans listening that know football, they have one less down. It has to go faster. The field is wider and longer. Um, they don't have a 50-yard line; they have a 55-yard line. The end zones are 20, and they're meters, not yards, but they're
Of course.
20-meter deep. Everything's live. You can have like everybody in motion pre-snap, and they have 12 men on the field. It's that the defense has to be further back, so it's much more dynamic. I watched the Grey Cup this year; it was good fun.
Okay. Did you watch any of this weekend's playoffs by chance?
The game last night was probably one of the best football games in history.
And you could almost have said that about all 4 games that were played over the
Yes,
weekend. It was
yes, they
amazing.
all walk off
Field
scoring
goals.
events
Yeah.
for all
Yeah.
4. That's the first
It's
time in
ever.
history that's happened. Yeah.
I was still trying to get my head wrapped around how the Buccaneers lost. I thought to myself, oh man, Brady's the GOAT after they tie it up, and then wait, what just happened? How did wait, what? Stafford took him all the way down the field, and okay, all right, yeah, yeah. This is why you don't bet on sports. It's as simple as that. So
Yes, no
uh,
kidding.
or you don't don't bet on sports with money that you need for anything. Maybe might be another way of phrasing it,
Or
right?
even the Packers game. I know
Yes,
it was it was what, 10-3, or like, in horrible snowy conditions in
right.
Green Bay, and they lost. I was like, wait, what? How did that happen?
I know, I know.
Block a punt for a touchdown and then kick a last second field goal. Go figure.
This is why we watch. If you knew what the
Yeah,
results were going to be, it wouldn't be nearly as compelling. But
the my daughter, 14-year-old daughter, is in the high school marching band, and so we got to go to Ford Field because our high school made it to the championship of their division, and they got up quickly, and but then just got hammered. I mean, they were down 5 scores or something ridiculous by halftime, and we were
Oh,
like, we may leave. We had to like my daughter was on the bus, so it's like we may leave right now because why do we want to stick around? And I was like, well, let's wait because she has make sure she gets food, and then things like started getting interesting, and remember the Titans kind of thing, and by the
right.
end, they walk off field goal after being down forever and not being able to stop the other team, and we were like, what did we just watch?
Hmm.
So it can be fun.
Yeah, no, like I say, there was a Premier League game over the weekend, the same kind of thing in stoppage time, almost last second kind of goal thing, and it's like, huh, that's what makes sports compelling, at least as far as I'm concerned, but to
Yep.
each their own. So I have to bring up streaming because we have to eventually talk about Ted Lasso. I'm contractually obligated to talk about Ted Lasso, but has there been anything over the last couple of years that has sort of given you some calm in the midst of this pandemic? Anything that really resonated for you?
um so I'm a I love to read fantasy genre books, right? So my dad, gave to me when I was young The Hobbit and said, here, read this, and this is one of the best books ever written, right? And of course, follow it up with Lord of the Rings, and then I
Yep.
go to his buddy Lewis, and I read the the the, the whole of the Chronicles of Narnia, right? So you can see where I'm coming from. Um, Recently, I have been reading uh, a lot of uh, Brandon Sanderson's books.
Hmm, okay.
If you've never heard of Brandon, um, fantastic books. He has his own. Most of the books are in his own. He creates a universe, and then there are multiple series based on different planets in the universe. Like it is just he's a fantastic writer. Have you heard of The Wheel of Time by Robert
Yes.
Jordan?
Yes.
So his widow picked Brandon Sanderson to finish The Wheel of Time.
Gotcha.
So that's the kind of writer he is, and that's how
Right.
good he is, right? And Amazon Prime was like, we were doing this Wheel of Time series. Like, I better start reading these books. So I've
Hmm.
been, um, besides the Brandon Sanderson books, I think on book 4 of Wheel of Time, and
Okay.
we've watched season 1, which is basically book 1. But so that's been a lot of fun. Um, I have not watched Ted Lasso.
Well, we'll work on that, but
Yes.
let me skip back one quick. Have you read or seen the Expanse series at all?
No, and I think I've been watching you and Mark and a few others. So I have been some another Apple thing was the Foundation.
Yeah.
So I've read I think the first 2 Foundation novels. So I
Okay.
wanted to read that. So yes, the Expanse is on my list to read slash watch.
Just be well aware that you are making a commitment. And then to your point, I did tweet at Raju, who got me interested in this, saying I'm not sure if I should thank you or curse you because
I'm on
it's a lot of books.
I'm on book 4 of 13 of Wheel of Time.
Right. I believe The Expanse is 9, I think. There's a bunch of novellas in there too, so it's not entirely clear to me how to count all of them. And I think I believe I just started the final book, although I think there's at least one other sort of story that comes out later this year that contributes in some way, shape, or form. But it
Nice.
is. I mentioned this on a thing I was teaching. I said it's like Game of Thrones in outer space. I didn't mention the name of the show or the series, and they're like the Expanse series. I'm like, yeah, yeah, okay, and Berglund was pinging at me too, saying you should watch it. So there we go. If you're looking for some kind, I mean, it's too cold to go outside. It's not like we're gonna go outside when it's 2 degrees, other than
Yeah.
to shovel off the driveway. I mean, leave the house. Who does that in the winter?
Yep.
Um, so I guess it's good that we have all this massive content to get through, but so yeah, the Expanse should be on your list. Just be prepared for a
Yep.
commitment.
Yep. So the other things, uh, we are a Star Wars and Marvel family. Um, so the Mandalorian was like, give me Grogu or give me death, right? Like that was so good.
Yes.
Um, and getting into the Book of Boba Fett, and um, can't wait. We watched Hawkeye. So we did go. I've been to a movie theater. We went
Ooh,
during.
brave.
Yeah, well, a assigned seats that are all recliners, so
Yeah,
there's
that
already a
helps.
lot of
Right.
space in between. And we went for a matinee and
Fair point.
weekday, and it was fairly empty. Like we've been places that are a lot more
Sure,
people
sure.
than that. But the latest Spider-Man movie
Oh yeah,
was
outstanding.
just, yes,
All right.
yes. If you
Okay.
like Spider-Man, so good. One of the best Marvel movies, period,
Wow.
in my opinion.
Wow. That's that's
Yes,
that's a
that's
big
saying a
statement
lot.
right there. That's
It
saying a lot.
is. It
Okay.
is.
Okay. All right.
From Iron Man 1 to like Endgame and Ragnarok, right? Like those are some tough shoes
Pretty
to
darn good
fill.
movies. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Java Grunt's trying to tell me that bike
Some
riding and
exercise.
running is okay if you have the right gear. Okay, listen, I will contend that I'm somewhat sympathetic to the statement there is no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing choices. But again, I just want to point out it is single digit right now Fahrenheit here in my home state. I mean, we were all the way up to 8 degrees. And I don't know what that translates to in Celsius. I can't think in Celsius. I can think in kilometers, I can think in pounds and euros. I've just never gotten my brain wrapped around Celsius versus Fahrenheit, other than to know
minus
that
minus 13.
it's not good.
No,
It's not
no.
good. So, and there's wind chill warnings, gosh dang it. So, exposed skin will freeze in this part of the world. Thank you. But
Yep.
yeah, and see, the problem for me is I need a different bike. I'd need a fat tire bike, and my CFO is I ran in -8 last week. Well, that was a poor personal choice there, if you ask me. I mean, why? That's the real question. I'm thinking like, why? Like, whew, man, -8 to run. I mean, the running part alone for me is like a not gonna happen. I support your decision. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Again, I'm not the one that needs convincing here, Java Grunt. It's the person who's over my shoulder who's not paying attention. Oh wait, no, she is. Damn it, I'm gonna get in trouble for that later. As I like to say, if you don't hear from me later in the week, avenge me, Spencer, avenge me.
Will do.
But so you have not. Did you watch Hawkeye? I didn't. Let me ask that question before. And
Yes.
what did you think of Hawkeye?
Yes. Fun.
It was fun. It was
Yes.
fun. Do you think this implies there's going to be a Lady Hawk or something coming out of that?
I don't know. Every single thing Marvel does has leaves that open for the end.
Right.
So I think it's
Right.
just part of the formula now. Like,
Sure.
and then we can see, right? Like, yeah, I don't know.
Would
Certainly
you
could happen.
like to see a Lady Hawk? I mean, I do very much. That actress is fantastic.
Yeah. Yay. I'm. I've got 4 daughters, so the scene in Endgame where Spider-Man is like, I don't know what I'm gonna do to get this thing over there, and then all the women lined up behind him and are like, "We got this." That's like, yes. So
I still think Black Widow is one of my all-time favorite characters, and it is amazing to me that it took so long to finally get a standalone, Black Widow movie.
yep.
I still think my favorite scene was in Iron Man 2, where she is kicking every single person's ass, and John Favreau is barely attacking one person, you know. So I that is still to me one of the all-time great Marvel scenes. But so yeah,
And
I'm all in favor of a Lady Hawk or whatever they would call her her own series if
he
they did something like that.
he is not just a minor character in the latest Spider-Man.
Oh,
He's more than a
interesting.
minor character. Yes.
Okay, all
So
right.
yeah, John Favreau is like, yeah, one of the brilliant. I mean, to go from Elf to Iron Man,
Mm-hmm.
like, and the Mandalorian, like, holy crap, right? Like
Right.
that's, and I guess the technology that they used on Mandalorian, the digital sets and things that they used is like revolutionized doing these episodic
Yeah.
but cinematic looking things that they can do them in the with smaller budgets and still have great looking effects and things. So.
Well, that's what I think has been to me so interesting about this is to see how I would argue they're taking sort of movie concepts and applying that to episodic shows. And each of these things, like they may only have a limited run, you know, like WandaVision, which I thought was outstanding. But the fact that it's essentially a really long movie, or maybe three movies in a row, kind of, but it moves the story forward in a really interesting way. And I give them a lot of credit, and I would love to sort of get that behind the scenes view of how they keep all those threads in line and you know get those arcs to come back like that. And this character, we're just going to kind of introduce them here, and then oh look, here's where we really were going with that. I mean, I that has to be very well thought out, and I would just love to understand the whole piece of that. But
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the. Well, I mentioned both the books, but there's both turning into the series, Lord of the Rings and Chronicles of Narnia. So should be interesting to see both of those. The Lord of the Rings, what was it? That just came out with the names, the Rings of Power, I think, set
mm,
2-3 thousand years prior to Hobbit, Lord of the
yeah.
Rings time. So yeah, definitely should be interesting.
I mean, we're living in a pretty golden age of content. But it's also overwhelming, you know, with the sheer volume of it. And there is still a limited amount of time in a given day. And you know, you can't watch three shows at once. You know, it's really challenging. And then, I mean, I've run into this scenario where again, you have this unlimited content. It's like, well, you know, another spin through Ted Lasso sounds like a nice way to spend a couple of days. Or yeah, we should probably watch Star Wars for the gazillionth time. You know, we did that over the sort of New Year's weekend there, watched all of the Star Wars movies. Well, modulo the prequels, but you know, they don't really count.
Well, have you heard of the Machete
Oh
Order?
yes. Oh yes.
Very good. I'm
Now,
I'm okay with I'm okay with the prequels. The one is iffy. I mean, I like Qui-Gon, but yeah,
right.
if you started with two, I think you're okay.
We ran into this scenario where and I don't remember how old Everett was when I showed him the movies, but I started with New Hope and worked my way that way. And I grudgingly showed him the prequels, but I did not show him number one. I refused to show him number one because it's such a throwaway movie, honestly, in the grand scheme of things. And I was traveling, and Christine relented and showed him number one, and I felt a little like, okay, I failed you in some way, shape, or form. But it's funny when we were talking about doing it over New Year's. I said, well, do you want to do essentially like Machete Order, or how do you want to kind of piece it together? Because now with mean, you could go so far as to even bring in the series, right? If you really wanted to go all out, you know, where does Mandalorian fit into here? Where does Bad Batch fit into here? You know, you go all the way
Oh
into,
dear.
you know, to
The
the
cartoons that have like
animateds.
multiple year runs are like holy crap, yeah.
Well, and what's so fascinating is if you're paying attention, you can see where some of those pieces show up in the last couple of movies too. You
Yep.
know, there
Yep.
was we were watching the last three, we paused a few times because it's like the ghosts right there, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're right. You know, and it's really cool to kind of see them thread that in as well as you know a little bit of a hat tip, so to speak, to the fans, Easter egg, whatever you want to call it. But you know, it is challenging, I think, to you almost kind of have to have your own sieve of what's worth my time and how long do I give a show before I pull the ripcord, or a book for that matter. But
Yeah, and it's interesting. I have a pretty low bar of like I don't like to be super critical of some movies. It's like, boy, did I have fun for 2.5 hours? Like, yeah, great. Do I have to watch it again?
yeah.
Eh, maybe not. But so yeah, it's yeah, I can enjoy things that even critics pan or whatever. It's like, oh, it was still good. Like I really enjoyed the the last three of the Skywalker trilogy. I thought those were fun. Rogue One is such a good show.
Mm-hmm.
Like I haven't done it, but I like just watch up to this. I would love to have it just like cut, like don't even. There's no black, there's no credits. You just cut over to New Hope
Straight
and
in.
just keep
Yeah.
going, like right, because it
Mm-hmm.
fits that
Mm-hmm.
so good. But
Yeah, we
yeah,
did that as much as you could with modern technology, right? Go directly from Rogue One in, and like that's not bad. That's not a bad way to
yeah,
go.
yeah,
I don't think that would work for someone who didn't have a grounding in sort of that universe, right? If it was the first time
right.
you were ever seeing it, I don't think that would work. But for your, I don't know, 9 millionth time, yeah, it's pretty spiffy. But um, oh, interesting. I enjoyed the new Matrix. So Java Grunt, first and foremost, yeah, we'll have to get you in touch with Christine, see if you can convince her. I'm not liking my odds. Well, bikes are an N-1 problem. You always need to know. Oh, yeah, I got a grunt. All right.
And there are like new that they're scarce bikes. Like it's
Oh yeah,
months
yeah,
back ordered.
yeah. Supply chains are real. There's no getting around that. And yeah, the new Matrix. I actually thought the new. I don't know. Did you see the new Matrix movie, Spencer? Then
I did.
I can't remember what the heck they called it anymore because it all the names are so similar. They all blend together in my brain.
Resurrections.
Could be something like that.
Yeah.
Revolutions and rebooted, and I don't know. I suppose reboot would have been way too on the mark, so it wasn't
I,
that. But
again, it was fun. I thought
I
it was
thought so.
clever. Yeah, and when I realized that the actor who plays Agent Smith plays the love interest in Frozen, you go, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's the guy with the reindeer?
Mm-hmm. It's pretty
That's
remarkable.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have IMDb kind of at my fingertips, so pretty much all the time now. And although I joke that Christine's sort of a walking IMDb, I should have learned by now that anytime she says anything in a movie, like I'll say, "Isn't that so and so?" She's like, "No, it's not." I'm like, "Yeah, it looks like, but it's not." And then I foolishly IMDb it only to be proven wrong. So
And to go further, Jonathan Groff, this actor, it was in Hamilton, the
oh,
musical,
you're right. Yes, yes,
as the king, I think.
yes. Uh huh. Uh huh.
So yeah, crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like now I'm in a sci-fi thriller evil villain,
Mm-hmm. I
and he
mean,
was great.
they got range, right? They got
Yep.
range. So no, very much. I enjoyed that movie more than I expected to, given that it was the first one was so good. This,
Yes.
number two and three were not so great, and then the fourth one was better than I expected it to be. So the system works. System works. Okay, so I have to put Spider-Man on my list.
Yep.
I will eventually get to all that. Did you happen to watch was it the Immortals? Get to that one yet?
Uh,
I think that's what it's called. The Marvel movie that had like 19 the
Eternals.
Eternals, excuse me. Sorry, off by one
Yes.
there.
Yes. Yes. I did watch it.
What'd you think of that
I
one?
enjoyed
Just
it.
out of curiosity. Yeah, yeah. Entertaining. I'd put it in the entertaining context.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like
Yep.
that was more of one of these movies that's just it's here to interject some new direction, and we're gonna bump us in a new way and bring in some new characters, not so much to
Yeah.
be a
Because
standalone watch later.
when the star of Game of Thrones is a boyfriend,
Mm,
and you're like,
mm-hmm, mm.
what is? Wait, and then there's a end credit scene, and you go,
Ah, I
Gotcha.
see. I see. Yep. Yep. This is the amuse bouche before we get to where we're really going. But oh man, I tell you, the system works. Let me throw a few lightning round questions. Yeah, I haven't actually
Sure.
done this in a while, so let's see what kind of trouble I can get into here with my lightning round questions. What's your comfort meal? What's your I feel like having a good meal, a celebration meal. What do you lean towards?
That's a loaded question nowadays. Um, I think in the past it would have been a good steak and potatoes, but things have changed for
Okay.
me. But
Okay.
yeah.
How do you feel about breakfast for dinner?
Oh, if I'm at a restaurant that serves breakfast,
Mm,
I am getting breakfast.
smart.
Like, there's no decision. Like, the rest of the menu is just gone, and I will
Sure.
get breakfast.
In certain restaurants, that's clearly their specialty, and you should embrace that, even if it's 10 o'clock at night. Just embrace the specialty. It's like you go to a barbecue joint, you're gonna get barbecue. Come on, don't be silly.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. So, pie or cake?
This probably would have been easier for earlier in my life. I would have said cake, no
Okay.
questions
Okay.
asked. Um, but a good pie, I wouldn't, you know. Well, here, how about this? Like the melding of the two, and
Mm.
you get cheesecake.
Well, I was just gonna say because I have had debates in project rooms about
Is
is
cheesecake
cheesecake
pie?
pie or cake, and or is it its own completely separate category of dessert item? And of course, we also had
It's a
debates about
is a
muffins
hot dog a
versus
sandwich?
right. I mean, these are the real questions that we need to get into here. Maybe we should have a BCAC just devoted to these kinds of questions. We lost like an hour and a half one day getting into muffins versus cupcakes. What does and then I think we sort of settled on muffin as a way of justifying eating cake for breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, like the difference between a cake recipe and a bread recipe isn't that different, right? So it's like we're
I know. I mean, there's a nuance there. There's the lines are blurry, would be the politest
yeah,
way to
yeah.
put it. So, how about oceans or mountains? You've lived near both.
I grew up in the mountains, so I'll pick those.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wish we had more
Which
elevation here in
struggle
Minnesota.
struggle with here in southeast Michigan.
Yeah.
When I moved to Maryland, um, 2007, as we were driving down I-80 in West Virginia through some hills, and I was like big swaths of trees cut out from these hills. I was like, why? Like, why are that? And as we get closer, you can see the chairlift running up these hills, and it's like, oh, it's a ski resort. That's a ski resort.
That's so cute.
Right. Like I grew up skiing at Sundance.
Right.
Robert Redford's, does that just happen to be the closest ski resort to my house? But right, like, but you go up the canyon, you go up to get to the
Mm-hmm.
bottom,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can take the ski lift up, and then you could get off and take another ski lift up,
Right.
and you're at like 9 or 10,000 feet elevation by the time you get to the top of the mountain.
You see, we have some friends that are big into downhill skiing, and Minnesota doesn't exactly have a lot of that. I mean, I think the highest point in my county is 980 feet or something like that. But I always like to point out, Lindsey Vaughn grew up skiing on our hills, and she didn't suck. So you don't have to
Yeah,
have 10,000 feet elevation, although it helps, definitely helps. But
this is why the U.S. ski team is headquartered in Park City, Utah.
exactly, 100%. So food trucks or Michelin stars? Where are you and I going to go to eat when we finally are back in the same meat space? Which I'm desperately hoping happens soon. I mean, we were supposed to theoretically have been together. I want to say last
Right.
week.
It was last week, yes, in Paris of all places.
We would have had a very good time eating in Paris.
Yes. I mean, my budget says uh food trucks,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But one so my mother-in-law, who now lives here with us, but she used to live on the Oregon coast, taught piano lessons. And she to adults, kids, whoever, she was teaching a chef and of a restaurant on the coast of Oregon. And she's like, we were coming, she's like, I'll watch the kids, you go have an oh my word. He like knew we were coming, and the normal 7 course was like 11, and oh my word. So good. So good.
Yeah, there's something to be said about food when it's taken to the level of art. When you
Yes.
have someone that is obsessive about food and taste and texture and pairing things together, and you take somebody who is as passionate about that as we are about these weird things called computers. It's pretty amazing what comes out the other end. So I'm a big fan of that. That's
Yep.
one thing I've desperately missed over the last 2 years is haven't had any Michelin star in that time period. But I have eaten a lot of wagyu though, so I guess I can't complain too much. But thanks,
There's some
Paul, for
Paul. Yeah, that's Paul talking there.
it's all Paul's fault. I know that much. How about
I
so
just
we?
I just freak out when I go to Costco and see. As far as I know, that's the only place like you can get wagyu close to me, and
Sure.
it's $100 a pound for a package of 2 steaks, and it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I, we have friends from church that run a farm, and we bought a half a cow for uh, not much more than like
Right.
maybe
Right.
twice that much. So
Hmm. It
it's
is.
hard.
It's definitely a step up in price, and I will say that there's been more than a few times though where you really do understand why, and it's not an everyday steak
Sure,
item,
sure, sure,
obviously.
sure.
Um, it's more of a celebratory, hey, it's the Fourth of July kind of thing. But it we did actually our the person I get my wagyu from had duck, and so we actually made a duck for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
That was pretty amazing. Having never tried that before at home, I would do
The
again.
the
So.
the last we went anniversary just earlier this month, and we went out to a Mediterranean restaurant, and my wife had the duck. She was impressed too.
Mhm. And it's good eats if you can find it.
It
So
is.
we talked a lot about books. So when you grab a book, you getting that on your favorite e-device, or are you getting that in paperback?
Oh, for the past, I don't know how many years, it's going to be an audiobook for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've always struggled with the audiobook because my eyes feel like they need to do something. And then they're like, well, I should probably just read this other thing while I'm listening to this thing, and then that just doesn't work.
Nope.
Does not work.
No, it does not work. Nope.
Crosses the streams. You get about half of either, and then it's like it makes no sense anymore. You're like, wait, what? Yeah, yeah. No, I've tried, but
Though I did do foundation text, not paper,
okay.
but
I'm interested to see where you land on this one. Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, what I figured.
I just like this was it was literally my first big fantasy book that I ever read. So
Nice, nice. How about DC or Marvel? I think I know this one.
it's I mean, I love the Marvel movies, but I was a DC kid.
Sure.
I had Superman bed sheets, right?
Hmm.
Superman and Batman were were it. So
I I would love to understand why the DC universe has struggled so mightily at coming up with anything remotely close to what Marvel has pulled out.
I don't know. They didn't have John Favreau to start it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you got to think there's going to be some people issues there because the content's good, the villains are good, the characters are good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
You know, I mean, Wonder Woman was fantastic. So I mean, it can be done.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't have a ton of comic books, but I have the the Superman is dead one,
sure.
and the was it four Supermen that replaced him shortly before he obviously came back. But yeah, those are all in protective sheets in a
Yeah.
box somewhere.
Did you ever read or watch Watchmen?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think you would probably enjoy either of those. Those well, the HBO series was fantastic. I mean, that was stunningly good. The movie I thought actually was pretty good too, but the graphic novel, I guess it would be described as,
Hmm.
is pretty outstanding. So, action, comedy, or drama? If you're looking for something on a random Tuesday night,
Um, Probably action. Yeah.
how about Notes app or a notebook?
Definitely an app as opposed to like I can carry around one thing, not N
Yeah,
things now.
yeah.
I used to have a Franklin
Oh yeah,
planner. Do you remember Franklin day
yeah,
planners?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
It's
to
so given you know where you and I come from, and both having kids, I don't know about you, but I take great delight in watching an old movie, you know, something 15, 20, 25 years old, and pointing out to my son that that's what a cell phone used to be. That's what a TV used to be. And it's clear there's more than a few times where he's like, "What?" You know, I mean, like this, and it's amazing how much of that change has happened, and we just take it for granted. You know?
what's that? Oh, that's the so did somebody 3D print the save icon?
Yes,
No,
exactly.
that's a 3.5 inch floppy
No.
disk.
Order of operations.
Yeah, yeah. Right. Like that's it's just an icon for many things. And yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing how many devices our phones have ultimately replaced in the repertoire. I remember this was a number of years ago, but my father-in-law wanted like a video camera for something, and we had to convince him just use your phone. Your phone has an incredibly good camera on it. Just use that, and it just didn't quite click for him that you could just do that with your phone now. You don't need a separate camcorder device. You know, it's like, huh, can be done. Can be done.
Yeah. I mean, my parents have been in West Africa for almost a year, and to be honest, it's not all that different than from them being in Utah. Chat with them, email,
Sure.
video chat. Like the time difference is the other direction now, but
Right. Right.
other than that, it's not a lot difference, which is just crazy. I mean, when I was in Brazil when I was younger, it was mail, and
Yeah.
it was 4 weeks round trip, like 2 weeks to get it. And it was lucky because if I responded the same day, it could be 4 weeks, but many times it was six or eight. And yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, yeah.
it's interesting you bring that up because I've thought about that a lot with the travel. That it used to be a lot harder when you would land, even if it's domestic travel. How do I get from here to the hotel? Oh, I got to rent a car. How, you know, all these, so many of these things that have been replaced, let alone the communication. You know, I very distinctly remember when you'd have to like make these arrangements and, all right, well, I'm gonna, you know, we have to get the hotel phone and try to call you, and hopefully you're there. And now it's just like, oh, I'll just text you, or I'll just call you, and don't even think twice about it. It's amazing how the
And
world has
it's
shrunk that way.
immediately when the plane lands, or even you're can you have connectivity during the flight even now,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is crazy.
It was kind of nice the period of time before we had sort of ubiquitous Wi-Fi in the air. You had that couple hours where, oh nope, can't get a hold of me. Nope, can't bother me. I got 2 hours just to chill and read and catch up on stuff, and now it's like, oh no, you're gonna slack me while I'm in the air. Fantastic. Yes, of course I can try to
Nice.
help you with that problem. Yeah, yeah. How about cats or dogs? As my cat has once again reappeared here somewhere. He was
Um, not a huge pet person, but I
okay.
would go with a dog
Okay.
probably before a cat.
I'm not against dogs. Just cats
Never
are a
had
lot less
pets
work.
growing up,
Okay.
and well, we didn't. My mom was just didn't want to take care of it. And of course, while I was in Brazil, I get a picture of a puppy. I'm like, what the heck? I leave and then they get one, right? And
Right.
they didn't
Right.
just get
Exactly.
like a little, small. They got a boxer,
Oh,
which is just a big dog,
yeah.
drooly dog. Yeah.
Well, I think at some point we get pets to replace our children. We get so used to having that thing to take care of, and then that thing decides they don't need us anymore, and so they will get a fur baby then.
But I've done poopy diapers and stuff. I don't want to do that. Keep doing that, do
It's
you?
true.
Anyway.
That's true. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I mean, it's trade-offs. It's trade-offs. There's no getting around it. I mean, the cat will snuggle with you, and then you can kick the cat off when you're ready to go to bed, right? And it's parenting with a lower threshold, I guess. The cost of failure is a lot lower. How about tabs versus spaces? Where do you fall on that eternal developer debate?
um, I was a spaces guy.
Okay.
The spring team is tabs. Um, Historically, for whatever reason, they chose tabs, and it's the team thing.
Okay.
So tabs. But I've since become a tab person for um, accessibility.
Oh,
If you have a screen reader reading code that is space, 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 space,
that's a
space,
great point.
space, it's almost impossible for someone that it's very difficult for a screen reader to read because it's tab. There's a single or less tab, 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 or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Oh, that's a fantastic point. I makes me think of my friend Scott Davis would be echoing that. I just read an article about the Winter Olympics about how Nike has created this boot for the athletes to wear.
I,
It's only apparently going to be available for the
I
athletes.
saw that. Yeah,
Yes, the Fly Ease boot, and then the very last paragraph of the article said, well, it's easier for everybody. And so why don't we just have these for everybody? Why is this an athlete excuse? So I sent that to Scott, and I'm like, see, this made me think of you. That's
and
one of
the
Scott's
other one that
championship
it's not
lines.
just for screen readers, for people that their sight they're not completely blind, but they need really big. They
Mm-hmm.
can set the depth of tabs in the editor as opposed to spaces. They can't
Sure,
set it, right?
sure.
So with tabs, you could say a single space indent or 4 or 2, whatever your view needs. You can set it if it's tab, but you can't if it's spaces.
That's a fantastic point. You've made a very
Anyway,
compelling argument. So I hear you. I'm with you on that. I can. I mean, I've never been. That's not one I've ever been particularly dogmatic about. Because it just usually is easier to just kind of, oh, okay, the team's going to do this. And part of that for me was I got scarred. I was pairing with this developer, and I swear to God, we spent 45 minutes reformatting this code, and I'm just like, seriously, we got stuff to solve here, and you're just clickety clicking your way through this to reformat it to your specifications. Like, does
yeah.
not seem like the best use of our time, but
And there were tools like that would check it out for you a certain way and then do it back. And
oh,
eventually you'd go, it would fail. And then there would be a merge where you're like, okay, I have no clue what
oops.
happened here because
Right,
every white space changed. And you're like,
right, right. What do I do now? Yeah,
yep.
yeah. Good times. Oh, well, Spence, I could hang out with you for like the rest of the day, and you and I've had quite a few conversations over the last couple of years, and I'm guardedly optimistic that you and I will be in the same physical location sometime in the next, I'm just going to say 6 to 18 months. I'm going to give myself a really broad, range here because I thought last week, but
Right.
and I'm genuinely hopeful of April, but I don't know anymore. I've given up trying to predict. The future is a mystery.
Yes, we'll be happy when it happens.
We'll be very
Not
happy when it
trying to
happens.
predict when it
No,
happens.
no. But we'll definitely have a good meal. I know that much. Oh.
Amen.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me, buddy. I appreciate it. We'll be back next week with Rita. Rita's going to hang out with me, and
Oh, nice.
very fascinated to see where that takes us. Because she's Yeah, she's interesting peeps. We've had some fun back and forth online. She'll tweet these amazing pictures and be like, "All right, I get down with that." So very curious to see where that takes us. But till next week, thanks, my buddy. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Stay warm, and don't hurt yourself shoveling.
I'll,
Can you make the teenagers do it, man? That's why we have them.
I'll try.